Sticking with the flyweight division, we're going to go over to this matchup between Cody Durden, who comes in at plus 125, going up against Tumendemberel, who comes in at minus 145. Now, Durden is looking to snap this 3-fight losing streak that he's on, as he's come up short against eventual champion Joshua Van, who was able to stop his takedowns and box him up on the feet, losing to Jose Ochoa, who was able to knock him out in the second round. And then the Alan Nascimento fight, where Nascimento pulled off a comeback submission victory after club and subbing Durden. Now, I want to hone in on that Nascimento fight for Durden, because that fight showcased solid improvements in Durden's striking game, but more so the confidence in his striking game to go out there and put that pace and pressure on Nascimento. Now, Durden comes from a wrestling background, so you often look to see him take opponents to the ground and try to smother them there, look for submission opportunities or ground and pound spots for him. But Nascimento, high-level BJJ black belt, I'm assuming Durden wanted to utilize his grappling defensively so he can try to bang on Nascimento with his power. And he was doing pretty well for about 8 minutes. As a plus 170 dog, he was looking like the favorite. Unfortunately, he eventually got caught with a counter down the pipe that seemed to wobble Durden, and Durden's instincts kicked in at that moment, got back to his wrestling, went for a takedown, and that allowed Nascimento to sink in. I believe it was an anaconda choke, and that forced Durden to tap. Now, Durden did try fighting out of the submission. I'll give him credit for that. Unfortunately, he was just put in a very bad position up against the cage where it was very hard for him to roll out of that spot. He utilized the cage, tried to get to a better position, but by the time he was clear of the cage, the choke was already too deep. It was already being held for too long, and he was forced to tap. So I'll give Durden credit. This guy is a warrior. This guy is a tough out. He's always going to bring the pressure. He's always going to bring the power, and he can lean on his wrestling when he needs to. But I think his last couple of fights have shown what his ceiling is. This is a guy I expect, even if he goes on a 4-fight losing streak, that the UFC will decide to keep around because of the action-heavy fights that he brings whenever he steps inside the cage. And action is exactly what he is going to get as he goes up against Mongolian prospect Tumendemberel, who is looking to build upon his submission victory over Terence Sadern from back in August. Now, Tumendemberel is a guy that I've faded twice, I believe both times as lock of the night plays, which means I am 1-1 against him. The first time we went with Carlos Hernandez, who I expected to evade the power punching of Tumendemberel and eventually utilize his grappling advantage to kind of to muzzle the Mongolian fighter. But Tumendemberel definitely showed much more resistance than I was expecting him to, and did not spend as much time on the ground as I thought he was going to. He was able to work back to his feet, and he was able to threaten Hernandez time and time again with the power that he brings. And then the Terence Sadern fight. He obviously lost the Hernandez fight by split decision. Again, played out much closer than I thought, but I was still happy to cash the lock of the night ticket there. But I thought Terence Sadern was going to be able to be a little bit more safer than Hernandez. I thought Sadern was going to be a crisper striker, and I thought his defensive grappling would be good enough, and his offensive grappling would have been good enough to put Tumendemberel in those bad positions. Now, unfortunately, Sadern just seemed muzzled by the power that was coming back his way, and then he shot in for a bad takedown attempt, and Tumendemberel showed off his submission game, which a lot of people seem to overlook, right? They kind of just see him as a guy that walks opponents down, throws big, reckless shots, and tries to knock his opponents out, but 2/3 of his wins have come by submission. I believe 6 of his 9 wins have come by submission, including that nasty anaconda choke that he got against Terence Sadern, putting Sadern away and putting him to sleep completely. Very, very impressive performance there by the Mongolian fighter. Throws with a lot of power, has crazy good durability. His defensive grappling is improving at a very solid rate, and I think that's going to make him go from being a dark horse to a guy that a lot of people will start to take notice of. Now, this will easily be his toughest matchup to date, going up against a guy like Cody Durden. Durden has fought the best and the worst of the flyweight division since joining the promotion back in 2020, and I'm sure he's going to go to his grappling here to try to get the better of Tumendemberel. Unfortunately, I think Tumendemberel can stop the grappling. I think he'll be able to work back to his feet after inevitably being taken down, and from there he can either threaten with submissions after Durden starts shooting bad takedown attempts, or he starts getting the respect of Durden when he starts throwing back with the heat that we know he can throw back with. So I don't really know what the approach here is from Durden. probably wrestling, right? He's going to look to try to stay away from the power of Tumendemberel. But as we've seen, the Mongolian fighter has done a great job in terms of working on his get-ups and then getting back on the pace and pressure, which often drowns his opponents. The spot that I like most in this matchup is the under 2.5. It's around the same as the money line on Tumendemberel. I'm expecting no matter who wins to end up getting the finish, whether it's Durden by submission or even Durden landing a big shot on the feet. As we know, the confidence in his striking is definitely getting up there. Or it's Tumendemberel landing the big shot and either getting a club and sub or just a straight up knockout, because we know he has the power in his hands as well. So I like the under 2.5 the most. I'm going to go with the Mongolian fighter. Again, I've faded him with lock of the night plays in his last 2 matchups, but I think this is going to be a tough one for Durden to overcome, considering the danger that the Mongolian fighter presents. So give me Tumendemberel. I'm going to say by knockout, but he could get a club and sub as easily as well. But I'll go Tumendemberel inside the distance.